Welcome to the talk show Life Stories with Marc Hoberman. The goal of this show is to provide a learning experience to people of all ages, with guests from various fields in academics, a wide range of industries, and insight into the many forms of art, athletics, and entertainment. We hope you enjoy the show. Camp Director George Coleman is today's guest. George will speak about his philosophy on enhancing the lives of children, as well as the many changes that have occurred in the camping industry throughout the decades. He will also discuss his many philanthropic endeavors that have benefited countless children.
Welcome to another episode of Life Stories with Marc Hoberman. Our show is all about sharing the experiences of incredible people. My throat's no good. Try that again. Welcome to another episode of Life Stories with Marc Hoberman. Our show is all about sharing the experiences of incredible people. We hope these stories resonate with you and even nudge you to make positive changes in your own life. Perhaps you know someone who could benefit from hearing today's story, someone who's facing challenges and needs a reminder that they're not alone in pursuing their dreams. Today's guest, George Coleman, has an incredible story about his many years as a camp director, which includes his past work as an educator and coach. Let's bring him on. George Coleman, welcome to Life Stories with Marc Hoberman.
Well, hi, Mark. Good to be with you.
So good to see you, George. George, tell us a little bit about your childhood, and include in that whether or not you went to camp.
I did go to camp. I was fortunate in that somebody put up the money that my family didn't have, so I could go. I attended what was then called the American Legion Children's Camp. And it was kind of rustic. It was up Bloomingburg, New York. It was no electricity and no water in the bunks. Therefore, no bathrooms in the bunks. We had wooden latrines out in the woods. And yet, those formative years were wonderful and gave me an appreciation of somebody doing something for me that I couldn't do or my family couldn't do for me.
Yeah, listen, people who don't go to camp really, don't know what it's all about, what they're missing. And yes, there's play, there's football and all that. But it's so interesting how times have changed. So you talk about running the water and the latrines, and now people walk into a bunk. You call this tile? And it's just so different because the camping industry, as you know, we're going to get into that in a little bit, has drastically changed over the years. I mean, I remember when I went to Wood Lane day camp in New York years and years ago. I mean, everything was wood and everything was kind of old looking. But I love the phrase that you put, the formative years, because many of us who have been educators, you included, know that a lot of it is based on curriculum. And my argument has always been that the character education is missing from education. So I love what camp offers above and beyond all that fun activity stuff. So speaking of education, what have you taken from your years as an educator and I believe coach, and how does that help you achieve success in the day camp industry?
Well, I guess the most critical point of my development and therefore the development of my experiences and my camps has been people. In understanding the importance of connections and understanding the value of people and seeking out that value and making the people understand that they are valued. So the formative years that I mentioned and you referred to as well, they created in me a desire to offer similar feelings to others, not activities, feelings, that of wanting to be part of something, that of being confident in my abilities and of people's willingness to accept me. And this continued as my family developed other camps as well. I guess the big takeaway is valuing people. That effectively creates a value in yourself, in that you are someone who's able to do that. Excellent.
That resonates with me because, as you know, I do some training at camp and some corporate training too. But something like 82% of people report it's not that they're not happy at work; they feel not valued by leadership. So, as wonderful as you could be as a camp director, and I say this all the time when I train, all due respect, if the administrators left to go to lunch, camp would still run. There'd be some holes here and there. But if all the counselors and all the caretakers who are in the trenches with those kids left for an hour, the camp would never reopen again. So that value of valuing people that you work with is so important, because that's the trickle-down effect that definitely goes to the children. You mentioned your parents, and I want to know where it all started, because the present Coleman Country Day Camp physical landscape has changed so much, not over the years, we have to say over the decades. So how did it all start?
Well, it didn't start with my parents. My parents were both gone before we had Coleman Country Day. And in fact, my parents, both immigrants from Greece, had good values and instilled those in me. But because they were much older parents, my father was 57 when I was born, there was a limit to the interaction that we had as I became an adult, and they began to transition in their abilities. But you mentioned something about how important it was. It triggered in my mind, money is not the driving factor. Whether you are the wealthiest man in the world or woman, whether you are the head of the camp or the person who is doing the maintenance on the camp, you want to feel valued, that you're doing something significant. You don't do it necessarily for the extra dollar, although the extra dollar is helpful, and it is a measure by which some people have of how they are valued. However, the critical issue is doing stuff because it's the right stuff to do, and setting, therefore, an example for others who may not understand it initially, but eventually will get it as you demonstrate to them. And then you've got to make a decision. If they don't get it, is it a matter of performance or is it a matter of training? If it's performance, you can't do much about it. Right. But if it's training, that falls on you. Then you've got to go make sure that those people are properly trained.
So true, because I've seen, and no matter where you are, Long Island, Pennsylvania, DC, there are people who want to do the job, but you're so right, because when I've trained people, sometimes you could tell they haven't been trained. They want to do the work, but if you don't have the knowledge and you haven't been given instruction, but that, I would argue, and I think you'd agree with me, is part of showing the value. When you show people you're putting the time to either bring training in or you train them on your own, and your staff certainly trains them, that's a way of showing value too. But I think what you're talking about is so important, and I believe it is so tantamount to your success over the decades that I want to drill down on that a little bit more. So walk me through what valuing people, and valuing more specifically employees, looks like in your world.
Well, I think an important part of it is that when they present themselves for employment, that you kind of, you said drill down. You drill down to what is important to them. What skills do they bring? What skills would they like to develop? What skills do you see that they could develop? And then setting them up for success, both through initial orientation and then ongoing training throughout their years with you. And we have folks on our staff. We just finished our 42nd year at Coleman Country. And we have people that are on our staff 35 years, 38 years. Who've grown up with us, that have been campers and then counselors and now administrative people, and a few that have worked with us year round. So it's a matter of identifying strengths, strengthening weaknesses, and finding a way to create the complete package that can offer value to their employment and therefore to the camp.
Well, then what kind of support do you give actually during the summer? So obviously there's orientation training, and there's worksheets, and there's all kinds of training with different people who are specialists in certain areas of the camp. So what is done on the job? I'm a counselor, I'm 16 or I'm 19 or even 22. What is it your hope that I'm learning and growing in the 8 or however many weeks of camp?
Well, we give you information and we give you fun. The information is disseminated on a daily basis from the top down. Every single morning, our supervisory group, our division leaders, it's a group of about 20, gather for a morning meeting, and that'll take place anywhere from 7 in the morning or 7:15 to anywhere from 7:30 to 7:45 or maybe even a little bit longer. And it's an outline of the day and a look at what's going to be happening over the next several days, and the preparation for special events that may be coming up the week after. That information then is transferred down by the division leaders to their counselors during morning announcements with the kids. One of their counselors stays with the group as one of the division leaders is speaking with the group about with their division about what's happening, while the other division leader is meeting with all the other counselors, their counterparts in those groups. So there's information along the way. And by fun, I mean we don't. Every camp has to have routine, but you've got to do things that are special for the kids and excite the counselors as well. The counselor's excitement brings engagement. Their engagement brings better supervision. And that's what we do throughout the summer. We also, during the summer, from time to time, have outside people that come in and work with our staff on various specific things that we may need. And we have, as do all quality camps, on call in case of a real emergency, psychologists, medical staff that can be called upon as needed. Fortunately, we haven't had a lot of need, but we do have the preparation and are able to, should we get that need.
It's very interesting because people go to school, people go to camp. I'm sure you have friends in corporate America. What kind of lesson, as a leader in the camping industry as you are, would you impart to a group of corporate leaders? Because there's no reason why certain jobs or all jobs couldn't be like camp. So what's the buzz you hear sometimes in talking to people, if you go to conferences or whatnot, or what do you think that a camp background or some of your philosophies about camp could carry over into other careers?
Well, most corporate leaders, the real head honchos, ladies and gentlemen, believe it or not, have been to camp. You hear Michael Eisner, who raves about his camp experience growing up. You have a fellow now who's head of the Big Ten, Tony Petitti, who founded the Major League Baseball Network, who was second in charge of Major League Baseball, and who was also a vice president of CBS Sports. Well, he was a counselor here. He was a counselor for one of my kids, as a matter of fact, in the group. His experiences went beyond counseling. He also worked in maintenance at the camp, pre-camp and after school. Their experiences in seeing how camps function, I think has translated into the way they run their organizations and the contacts that they make and the context within which they develop their future leadership.
So true. Really, really golden nuggets here. And I hope people are understanding how that transition can be made and how similar it is. Because I always say I've done some anti-bullying a lot in camps and schools, but I've only done anti-bullying twice in corporate America. And I have to tell you that the bully at 43 is the same bully he was at 11. He just has more power and a little bit more of a belly. But otherwise, some of those things don't change. I do want to say that on my show, George, we often talk about the story behind the glory. So tell me, what struggles did you have to overcome when you first started the camp? Because it didn't start where it certainly is now.
Well, struggles, of course, are we had no money. How do you buy a camp with no money? And yet I had a proven record at a camp that I had started from scratch at a private school in Woodmere, New York, called Woodmere Academy. And I had run a private camp for a family in Oceanside, a rather large day camp. So I had people who understood that I had the ability to operate a camp, though I didn't have the money. And so I put together a formula, so to speak, where I had a couple of significant entities, one which would own property and the other one which would operate. And the one which would own property is the one that raised the money and had a collateral, so to speak, for people to invest with us. Well, this was 1980 and interest rates were nuts. 1982 is when we actually closed on the camp. Interest rates then were about 18%. So I put together a program, a limited partnership, where my investors put up all the money to put the down payment down on the camp, for which they received 12% on their interest and overage based upon enrollment, knowing that I needed 483 kids. See, that number is very clear in my mind. 483 full summer equivalents of tuition to make that base 12%. I went out and I enrolled kids, and we opened up our first summer with 820. Of course, I had a following from the previous camp. People came to me, and we had changed the whole format of the camp. The camp that we purchased back in that day was called Camp Bauman. They had 220 kids, 20 of whom continued with us. So we had a big nut to overcome. So to get to the 483. And as I said, we surpassed that significantly. Well, in 3 years, I bought out all of my partners, and we then ended up with 100% ownership in the business, effectively with having put no money in. And my partners were all thrilled because they made almost 500% on their investment over 3 years. And I was thrilled with my family. My wife and I now were owners of the camp 100%.
That is unbelievable. And I'm trying to do the numbers in my head. The number that's important to me is I think you were in your early 30s when you did this.
I was 35. I started as a teacher and coach at Woodmere Academy, and had a reasonable degree of success, including that gentleman who's the head of the Big Ten, who played 2 sports for me. And we had a lot of successful teams, but we didn't have the stallions that some of these other schools had. But we had kids who would learn, who could be coached, and could frequently beat teams that outclassed them in terms of skill, but not in terms of heart combined with skill.
Mm. So true. I know that I'm from the East Ramapo School District. That's where I taught. And they don't have a lot of money, and they don't have the size of some of the other football teams, but the coaches are friends of mine. They were actually on the show. So phenomenal. And it's amazing how far heart can really take you. I have to circle back for a second. You have to correct me if I'm wrong. I think in 1982, when you opened, and I've worked with a lot of camps that have a history of decades, I think that number 483 is tremendous. Am I wrong?
No.
First year?
Well, you're right, but I was accustomed to running camps that were significantly larger. For instance, the day camp that I ran in Oceanside had 1,100. The camp that I founded in 1978 that had 280 to begin with and had 800 the second year, it was limited only by the size of its pools. So I was accustomed to big camps, big numbers, and lots of organization. So I personally took care of the transportation, the scheduling, the hiring, all the aspects. So I really learned, and I learned from good people that were ahead of me where I worked at the day camp in Oceanside. However, that was a rocky start because it all had to happen in a hurry to get to the number of 483. And fortunately, with the following that we had, we were able to do that.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's the number I meant for our first year to go. You were camps with 1,100, but they didn't start 1,100. I think that it's a monumental task to hit that number. And plus, I'm guessing the pressure was more because if you own the camp at that point, which you didn't, you turn to your wife and say, well, we tried, but didn't work out. But you had investors that you had to answer to. So that's a lot of pressure for a 35-year-old and really an amazing business story. You did mention your wife, and I noticed that when I've done a lot of the camp training, not all, but many of the camps are family, not just family owned, family passed down, the family is in it. So I work with several family owned camps. So tell me, what is it like working with your family? And I guess more specifically, your son, Ross.
Well, before we get to my son, it's our son, Ross. My wife is the real deal in camps. My wife is the former national president of the American Camp Association. And she served on the board there as well as having been on the board, been involved with the New York State Association. My son, Ross, has been head of the New York State Camp Directors Association. He is just completing a term as the Long Island Camps and Private Schools Association president, and has really brought us to yet another level, has expanded our business from a summer camp to a year-round business that involves the facility rental. We have 3 indoor athletic venues that are rented 7 days a week from second week of September right through the beginning of camp. So it is a family business. We have another son Jordan, who was in the camp business and said, I want to go and live my dream. I trained as an engineer and I'm going to make myself an Imagineer for Disney. Well, now he's in charge of show controls for the rides in the world for Disney. He reinvented himself and does that. But he consults with us from time to time because he has to keep us honest.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me tell you, Disney and camp, there's a lot of similarities there, no doubt. That's wonderful. Yeah. So, Coleman country, it's really not, I don't want to demean camps by saying just a camp, but it really is a dynasty. I mean, grandparents, I think, have their grandchildren attend your camp, grandparents who may have been at your camp. You're talking 42 years. So
yep.
What does this community connection mean to you and your family?
Well, that's a great lead in. Thank you. We're very engaged in community.
Right.
We have started camps for kids who cannot afford to go to camp. We have a free camp for children that we were involved in the formation of about 14 years ago in Colorado. It's called Roundup River Ranch, and it's one of the Paul Newman Hole in the Wall, what used to be called the Hole in the Wall Gang. Now it's called the Serious Fun network of camps, providing free camp for kids with life-threatening or chronic illness. We also are involved in hosting a number of kids quietly at our own camp that are unable to be at camp otherwise, or have had major calamities in their families. Our son, Ross, has been very much engaged with SCOPE, which is a program that puts inner city kids in camps, not-for-profit camps throughout our nation, because it's also expanded from the east. There's a Midwest branch, and there's a southeastern branch, and there's a western branch. And thousands of kids get to go to camp each summer by means of this outreach. And it's mainly those that are in private camping that have been funding this for so many years. And it is something that we are proud of, yet do not pat ourselves on the back about.
Well, you really should, because I know the Roundup River Ranch does so much great work. And as you said, it was originally Paul Newman's Hole in the Wall Gang, but camps. So tell me a little bit more about what goes on there and how long the kids stay, how many there are.
Are you asking about my camp, or are you talking about
the
Roundup River Ranch?
The Roundup River Ranch.
Excellent question. Roundup River Ranch, kids come for about a week, and each week is specialized because the medical needs are specialized, and the staff has to be able to accept and assist and be available medically for kids. So one week it might be a week on HIV/AIDS. Another week it might be epilepsy. Another week it might be lungs. Every week something else. And the staff, of course, there's a permanent staff as well as a volunteer staff that come in each week. And my wife and I both volunteered there. Besides being with groups and running activities, I've washed dishes, I've done cooking, and learned from some very good chefs. We run weeks starting in late May, going straight through to end of August. And then we have weekend camps for families. All right. And each weekend camp allows a family to come with a similar challenged child as other camps that weekend. And so the parents get a respite because they can bring their well children along with them, as well as the child that is challenged medically. And everyone can have a respite and I guess prosper and forget their concerns, not worry about special dietary needs. We handle that at Roundup River Ranch. So it is a challenge, and it's a worthwhile one.
Oh, for sure. Thank you so much for expanding on that, because that work is so important. I have to ask you, because I've seen a major change over the 20 years I've been doing certain things in camps. How is the mindset of the teen counselor, and maybe a little older, and other type staff, how has it changed over the decades? It's definitely not the same.
Well, it's not the same, and it's not necessarily bad that it's not the same.
Right.
The young people that we have here, for the most part, we've raised. They were here as campers. We're very fortunate. Our staff numbers in the hundreds, and the percentage that have been campers with us over the years of that staff is probably 70%. of our staff. So they've grown up with us, and including those people that have been with us 30 plus years. What has changed as the kids first come in, if they haven't been with us and they come to us at 17, 18, 19, biggest challenge they have is where do they put their phone? And because we don't allow telephone use at camp other than in one area and on a break, and that is restricted to counselors that area. So we expected initial pushback, but it very quickly became, this ain't bad.
Right.
I get to talk to people. I get to see people, and I don't need to worry about taking pictures because the camp is taking hundreds of pictures each day, and there's a specialized staff section as well. So we've accommodated them in that regard, and that has translated into better supervision and engagement with our campers.
Wow, yeah, and that interesting because that seems to be the number one pet peeve of people, because people live on their phones, and it's amazing because I'm very big on the phone. I'm on the phone all the time. I have a tutoring business where I have to text people all the time also, but I have to tell you, the 1 or 2 times I've left my phone somewhere or at home or something, the happiest 3 or 4 hours of my life, because and I do engage with people anyway, but it can be a distraction, and I just think it's great, the magic that you've worked all these decades. I have to say, George Coleman, thank you so much for being today's guest, sharing your very impactful journey with us. A special thank you for enhancing the lives of so many children and the work you do with those with certain medical issues. For all the people watching, I hope George's incredible journey has shown you that business success and giving back do go hand in hand. So remember that you have the power to make positive changes in your life as well as the lives of others. We love to hear from you, so stay connected with us on social media. Find us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, X, and LinkedIn. Don't forget to like us and follow us for the latest episodes and updates and exciting news. George, thanks again for being a guest today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, and I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Life Stories with Marc Hoberman. To contact Marc, email him at info@lifestorieswithmarchoberman.com or visit him on social media through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Thank you for watching Life Stories with Marc Hoberman.